Hello and welcome to the Disability on Screen kind of follow-up presentation to our seminars. So this was an internship joint founded by the Screen School and also the Education Department, hoping to look at the representation of disabled people in popular films. So I'm joined by my fellow interns Gareth, Ella and Hannah. My name's Nathaniel. We each held a seminar with a film of our choice, followed by a Q&A that looked at the way that disabled people were represented in that film. Started off week one with Unbreakable, which was your film, wasn't it, Hannah? So if you just want to tell us what your key question and what the takeaways were from that film.
The key question was, do we vilify people who are disabled? And the film Unbreakable was made by M. Night Shyamalan in 2000, so we're kind of just going to speak about the key questions that we had. So the first one was, do you think Elijah Price's disability is constructed to make him more like a villain?
Yeah, so that's a funny one, because Unbreakable, spoilers, is...
Turn it off if you haven't seen it.
It turns out that Samuel L. Jackson's character, who has brittle bone syndrome, is that correct? He was kind of pulling the strings the whole time, wasn't he? And he's actually the main villain of the film that's kind of been antagonising Bruce Willis's David Dunn throughout. So obviously, you know, kind of the question of whether we vilify the disabled people was only relevant after people had watched the film and realised who the villain in question was. But there were quite a few interesting points and kind of hints that people in the audience picked up on, weren't they? In particular, the use of colour.
Yeah, people had a lot to say about it, like the use of purples used quite a lot to kind of show Elijah as a villain. Even like he wears like a coat at one point and it has purple like
in the lining,
and people noticed it and pointed it out. And yeah, people has a lot to say about it, really.
Some really smart filmmaking choices there, isn't it? That kind of, because the rest of the cast and kind of the tone of the film in general kind of use quite, I'm trying to think of the word, just quite like pastel normal colours. Like Bruce Willis only kind of wears like greens and whites, doesn't he? So you kind of get that sense of an everyman. And then Elijah Price is obviously this kind of really extravagant, obviously he's got the hair and everything, and he looks like a supervillain, doesn't he? And you kind of alluded to the Joker, obviously, like, you know, he's very well known for the colours of green and purple, and there's kind of that, you know, that kind of cultural understanding within people that they kind of think, oh, well, that makes sense. It's kind of foreshadowed from the start.
They try to tie the colours together. Like there's a lot of scenes, like for example, there's a mirror and it's got green and purple on it. So they're trying to interlink the characters, or all like interlink the whole film as they're connected.
Oh, that's cool. So they're kind of like two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
That's really
You can't
cool.
have one and not the other. That's what Elijah thought anyway.
That's cool. And brittle bone syndrome, that is obviously a real disability.
Yeah.
That's quite a rare disability, I'd imagine, because obviously in my seminar we start talking about people, the representation of whether actors should play these characters if they don't have the disability themselves. But for your film, I'd say that's pretty impossible, right?
It's also difficult for the stunt scenes. Like there's one scene where Elijah falls down the stairs, and you couldn't have someone who had brittle syndrome, obviously, to fall down the stairs. And also there's scenes of him as a baby and a child, so it'd be hard to find an actor that's a baby or a child with brittle bone syndrome because it's so rare.
So, want to move on to the next question?
As an audience, did you feel like you had empathy for Elijah because of his disability? So there's quite a few points around that. Like, for example, when he was born, the doctor spoke about his disorder. He was born with broken bones, and instantly you felt sorry for him as he was born with such a rare genetic disease. So
I think in general the audience really do kind of sympathise with Elijah. Like I know that in the debate they were saying that he's quite odd and quite like charismatic in his own way. Like I knew a few people who didn't know the twist, so when it came they were like, what? No.
Yeah.
Like
I hadn't watched it before.
Did you not? No,
that was for the first time when I watched it, and even as a child you saw him sat inside by himself watching TV, and you're drawn to him because you naturally feel sorry for him, because having been a kid ourselves, you want to be outside playing with your friends, and especially when there's a park just outside his window, and you think, go outside, play, but he's obviously scared to, for obvious reasons.
That doesn't also excuse his actions ultimately, does it?
No, but throughout the film you don't realise that until the very end, so up until the last point you think, hang on a minute, and then
as you say, completely felt for him as well, and I'm sure that having someone as charismatic as Samuel L. Jackson is obviously a big part in that, because he's got the best lines as well, doesn't he? He's got lots of little quips, and he kind of is the audience almost, he's kind of got the knowledge of like comic books and superheroes and stuff that we're aware of. Yeah. So when he's referring to things that are in our real world, it kind of like aligns us with him even more.
He kind of like sets the rules for what happens as well. Like he kind of like tells Bruce Willis's character, oh, you will have a weakness, and then that's established. And then people kind of, quite a lot of the audience almost sympathise with what he did, because it's like he thinks he can only kind of work in the rules he set for himself, so he kind of sees it as the only way for him to make the world a better place is if he becomes the villain.
Kind of leads on from that, but is Elijah's disability framed as a justification for his actions?
Blimey, we've just been talking about that.
Yeah, kind of links in with that.
Again, I think it shows it's to make the audience understand, but I don't think Shyamalan is saying this is okay to do because obviously not. But it makes us understand his motivations more, which is really important for creating a good villain.
Definitely.
I know that some people wrote on their forms that there's a sense of bullying like from his childhood, because it flashes back to when he was a child and people are laughing at him, and the only way his mum could get him out was putting comic books on the bench so he'd go outside to get them. And some people feel like because he's bullied so much in his life and had so much pain that it kind of, and he's reading comic books, it all kind of like linked in for him to like what happened, even though it's not a justification, I believe anyway. Some people believe this was the reason why he kills all them people.
For the majority of the film, I thought he was just maybe a curious older man given his damaged background or childhood, and he was just curious and trying to fantasize about the comic books or the comic books that he's read, and he's trying to create his own story. So up until the point where it's revealed at the very end, you think, what's he playing at? He's like putting this sort of changing
David.
Changing his sort of mindset to think he's someone special, and he's like trying to playing with him and toying with his mind until it's revealed at the very end, and we can see that he has got superpowers or
If you take away that twist at the end and it just ends with him in the art gallery and they're just like talking together and they're like, oh, we're such good friends,
best friends,
this is great, is the film still good, do you think, or is it founded on that twist?
I think it adds a lot from a storytelling perspective, because it shows that there's always been kind of a threat the whole time, kind of bigger than anything he's faced, the main character's faced so far. Kind of sets up something far more sinister that he has to fight. It's like a rite of passage almost for him.
Yeah.
As a superhero.
I think it would kind of end on a bit of like a boring note.
It
wouldn't
just be a drop off rather than there is a climax at the end and you don't expect it, which is I think makes it that much better.
Because it winds down.
Exactly.
Doesn't it?
I found this question quite interesting. Does Unbreakable portray any other topics like racism or sexism? Do you see this at any point in the film?
It's definitely not an overt message, is it?
No.
It's not trying to talk about racism. It's talking about disability, if anything.
I do think there's some issues to do with sexism, as the wife to David Dunn, Audrey, basically she's always left to deal with the stuff to do with the child, whereas David Dunn's kind of always separate and doesn't want to, when he goes into the primary school, he doesn't know anything about like what he should do about his son, so it's kind of like the woman does this, the man goes to work type of thing. So
you kind of maybe get the impression though, as their relationship is fixed at the end, that might be a bit more equal moving forward.
That's true.
Subtext, I guess.
But
I totally see your point.
Someone pointed out something really interesting in the Q&A. You know that bit where he kind of first starts using his powers, and he sees like like you said, a black person getting glassed with a bottle, and like what?
Glass.
Oh lol. He sees a woman getting assaulted and stuff like that, and someone pointed out he kind of sees these people doing these things and then he just kind of lets them go, like he touches them, sees it, watches them leave, but when he sees the family tied up, then he acts. It's like, are those issues that important?
It's a tad problematic that he thinks that rape's not bad enough to go and sort out.
Was it you who pointed that out?
No, but it's a good point.
I think he tries to choose which crime's worse than the other, so he just goes to the one that's like most people are involved, kind of.
It's a bit of a rubbish
kind of good
superhero,
for.
isn't
Yeah, I think just saving the best till last.
it? Yeah.
Pretty much.
How do you feel the film Unbreakable portrays ability or disability?
Well, he's clearly capable of a lot, and
I mean, one thing I found that no one really brought up is that in the final scene where David walks away from Elijah, he says something along the lines of, all of this, it's because of the kids. They called me Mr. Glass. So that kind of implies that it was more about the treatment he received because of his disability rather than the disability itself that kind of made him take on the Mr.
Yeah.
Glass persona.
I think what people were saying is that the disability was kind of so disabling for him, obviously, that he kind of, the only path that he felt that he could have in life, because he felt like he could do so little, was to be this counterpart villain and found, you know, and he was, it's a combination, is it, of being so obsessed with the superhero comics that he kind of thought they must be real, and then also the kind of, you know, ostracizement,
Yeah,
is that the word?
Ostracized.
That he kind of, you know, that it kind of culminated in this insanity where he felt that this was the right path for him. I definitely think that disability is a massive part of that, and I think, you know, and people did on the Q&A as well, they were kind of saying that the bullying is kind of quite a big part of what Mr. Glass's character is all about.
Yeah.
It also might help him, like, because he thinks he's extremely intelligent, it might help him feel like he's good at something, like, because his body enables him from doing a lot of things. Might be a way of him dealing with his disability, the fact that he's, like, thinks he's a super villain. So I find that quite interesting.
It's an ego complex, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's again like putting himself above others because he feels that his disability is naturally put himself below others, that he kind of feels that he'll push his intelligence even further to feel better than other people.
Yeah, he just kind of wants a place in society, but the only society he really connects with is a fictional one.
Yeah,
So it's like he tries to make it real for himself.
exactly. That's a good point.
The last question I'm going to focus on is, do you think Elijah's disability makes him more likeable? Quite hard, difficult question.
Yeah, I think it ties into your question about being sympathetic to him. Like, of course, he's quite likeable, like you said from the outset. Like, you see a baby born with broken bones, you're going to automatically feel sorry for it and naturally be inclined to kind of want to see it succeed.
you are drawn to him, whether it be curiosity or
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, you know, in films, the way that characters are made to be, you know, sympathised with by the audience is we align with them, as in, like, we start our journey with them and see them grow and see the trials. But the first character we meet isn't Bruce Willis, it's
It's
Elijah Price as a baby. So we're kind of aligned to Elijah from the start,
Yeah.
and, you know, watching their journeys concurrently. I think the disability that he has automatically makes him a lot more sympathetic and therefore likeable to us.
I totally agree with that. I feel like there's some scenes where he's with his mother and you just feel like you feel sympathy towards him, and then therefore their relationship also makes him more likeable, I think. Like, the mother-son relationship shows how difficult it's been on both of them. So I kind of agree that, sympathy makes him more likeable. And there's also a sense of humour, and his personality is quite out there, so it makes him drawn to him. Whereas David Dunn's personality is a bit,
Stagnant.
Plus, when you think about it, like, Elijah wouldn't be Elijah if he didn't have the disability. He probably would go through a completely different path.
Yeah.
Like, his disability leads him to fiction as a comfort.
Yeah.
And then that gradually becomes something far more sinister. So he probably wouldn't even be the same, like, personality-wise or, you know, anything really.
Quite right. Cool. Any other closing notes on that point?
I was just going to say, if you enjoyed this film, I did say at the seminar, then M. Night Shyamalan has made the film Split, which focuses on someone who has schizophrenia. So if you like the interest of looking about disability in film, it's really interesting to watch Split as well to get another, like, opinion on another disability.
Yes. And Split's twist at the end,
Yeah.
spoilers, reveals that it's a sequel to Unbreakable,
Yeah.
isn't it?
So they're all linked, and then obviously there's a new one that came out this year, Glass. So they're all very good films, I'd say.
I disagree, but that's what makes the world go round. Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you very much for watching the first podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, and join us for number 2.
Please.
Cut. Thanks, guys.